Good afternoon, good morning, based on where you're joining from. Thanks for taking the time this afternoon to spend 30 or so minutes with me. Talking about a topic that I guess there's probably not a topic on the planet that people are talking more about, but today's framing should be wildly different, I think, from the common narrative on social and things. Um, and specific to the landscape industry, of course. Again, thanks for joining. Today we're talking about essentially Claude for landscapers, right? But from a bit of a different angle in terms of what makes AI actually impactful for the businesses that we serve. My name is Corey Halstead. For those of you who I have not met, I do see some familiar faces, but I am the co-founder and CEO of Halstead Media. So we basically build the revenue infrastructure and demand engines behind sort of the top 6% of the industry or so is our specialty. We've gotten here over the path of, I guess, about the last 13 years now. Um, we're a HubSpot Platinum agency, StoryBrand certified agency, and dedicated 100% to the landscape industry. So let's kick things off a bit and talk a little bit about how you're doing AI in your business now. So I gave a few talks in person a few months ago, and I gave a series for the last 2 years on AI. And I ask this question in person every single time as well. And it's been very, very interesting to watch the progression over the last couple of years. So still figuring it out. Yeah. The the most recent presentation I gave was about a month ago, and about 20% of the room, it's about 120 people or so in the room, about 20% or so had tried it and were using it sort of sporadically for, I don't know, light usage, I would say, right? Like ChatGPT, help me with this email, that kind of thing. So today's talk is going to be much more elaborate than that. More of the landscape industry every single day is falling into category B. And so we're really trying to break folks out of that category to where we're going in, we're trying things. Um, yeah, they're cool, but what is really changing materialistically in our business? So what we're going to cover today is kind of broken into four sections. So first one is essentially why does AI fail on broken infrastructure? So we're going to look at what those pillars of the infrastructure are. There's four of them. And then we're going to get a little bit tactical or a lot tactical. And we're going to look at like actual Claude workflows. Very similar to the ones that we use as we transition Halstead to be more agentic, and the ones that our clients are going to be layering on and are starting to layer on onto the infrastructure that we built. And essentially the WIFM, right? What is this going to help us do in our businesses, and what is the opportunity that you all face at this very early stage in the landscape industry? As we go through, feel free to drop questions in the chat. Austin, if I miss them, just interrupt and highlight them. Okay, section one. So I pose a unique and different angle to where we are at in the landscape industry as it relates to AI. I think that with every new technology, there is a ton of misleading content, a ton of clickbait content, and this happens with every new release of every technology, right? 13 years ago, I used to travel doing speaking, talking about the importance of a mobile website. And in the room was about 40% or 50% of the landscape industry who did not have a website, right? So that is the level of education that happens. And then at that time, we were talking about, oh my gosh, we need everything to transfer into Instagram because websites are not going to be anything that anybody uses anymore, and Instagram is where we need to be. At that point, like Instagram wasn't even relevant to a high-end design build or landscaping firm. So the same sort of narratives are always flowing through the marketing and sales world, right? So the danger with that is that lot of folks are promising that AI is going to come in and fix everything in your business. My angle to you today is that it's actually all relevant to your infrastructure that's underneath it. Only the information that you can provide to AI will make it actually truly valuable in your company. So, as we looked at most of the folks that we talked to, right? So now we're talking, Austin is doing much more of these conversations on a day-to-day basis than I am at this point, but we're still talking to hundreds of companies, right? Throughout the years, we're traveling, we're talking with these people at events. Most of the industry is in the stalled phase. Like we've tried this stuff. How does it actually impact our business? And that is what we're looking at today. So when we think about our big lift in the landscape industry, not any different than what our lift in the marketing agency world is too, is that we have to get our companies ready to leverage AI. And I've broken those down into four gaps that I see across the industry. So one, calls are actually not recorded on an ongoing basis in all locations. I actually left the last in-person meeting. The last point that I summed everything up was, and I said, all of this, and we did like a ton of ChatGPT workflows in that session. And the last thing I said was, if you take one single thing away from this session, it is to figure out how to start recording all of the conversations that are happening inside of your company. And the landscape world has a bigger challenge doing that than, say, we do, right? Because we are digital, we're remote, it's very, very easy. But it's not also insurmountable to do this at the landscape world, right? So how do we do that? So conversations need to be recorded. Two, CRM gap. So as you know, Halstead is a HubSpot Platinum partner. That's our CRM of choice, but there are many others that we service as well that clients come into us with. Whatever the CRM is, so long as it is integratable throughout all these different tools that we need, we got to have that. And a very, very small percentage of the industry has a true CRM because we have some really great ops softwares in things like LMN and Aspire, which we integrate with, but they are far from a true CRM. So we'll look at why that is so important. Point number three, processes. So luckily, there's a lot more great educational content in our industry over the last 5 years than there was prior. And there are organizations that are really helping landscape companies get processes in order. I think processes, well, I don't think, but I truly believe that processes is what makes a business run like a well-oiled machine. It's what team members, it's how the team member is held accountable to a standard. And those are all things that have been true for running a business since the beginning of time, right? How can we process what we do into an SOP, into a document that everybody can follow? With AI, those processes being documented are so much more important overnight. Because if those documented processes are not inside of this AI tool, then it's just pulling things from everybody else, right? So we'll look at that. And then four, disconnected data. So living in different tools, right? Whether you're running on LMN or Aspire or you have a HubSpot CRM in place or a different CRM. Trackers are my favorite, right? A lot of us landscape industry pros have trackers all over the place in Google Sheets or Excel sheets, RFP trackers or time trackers or whatever it may be. We got to pull all of those things together into a system that's ready for AI. So when we do this, right, when we have the proper foundation in place, we have what's called revenue intelligence or revenue ops, rev ops, pipeline intelligence, all of these different terms that basically mean the same thing. We have a connected system that AI can sit on top of. So let's dive in a little bit more to these four pillars. And there are arguably other ones as well, right? ERP systems, HR, like these are, but this is our world of these for today's lens, essentially. So conversations. How many folks drop a Y in the chat if you record conversations in your company? Awesome, awesome. Okay, Austin does. That's good. Cool. Lots of yeses. Fantastic. Okay. What we find usually, if there is a yes at this, that there are gaps, right? So, like we're recording the more easy conversations to have, in office conversations, sharing things, whatever it may be, that is a digital environment. But there are gaps when we're doing site walks or maybe kitchen table talks or in some internal meetings or things like this, right? And so this is what I challenge as to be incredibly important, right? Because our internal conversations, our site walk conversations, all of these things make up all of the activity that is being discussed in our company, right? And without it, Claude can't analyze those things. No AI tool can analyze it, right? It's going to manufacture what's being talked about, which is the last thing we want. So that's fantastic. Sales calls, if you're recording those across the company, you are set up to leverage AI in that regard. CRM. So the most of our clients are running on Aspire. Some are running on LMN or other versions of this, right? But when we think about a true CRM, like as we start to scale companies north of, 5, 6, 7, 8 million and beyond, there are more of these conversations happening in parallel, and there is more moving parts. And whenever there's more moving parts, we need a proper tool to help us organize these things. Most of these ops softwares have come around to the fact that a CRM needs to be integrated into the system, which is fantastic. And that's kind of what we do, right? Aspire to HubSpot is a big part of our business. So when we do that, our CRM is going to manage our pipeline, right? How much revenue is projected in each stage of our sales process. It's going to manage certainly all of our contacts and communications to an advanced level, meaning that we can create automations off of those things. We can target those different contacts based on the stage of the pipeline that they're in. It's going to manage all of the activities, right? So as we record all of these conversations across the different conversations that are happening in our company, they are going to be synced into our HubSpot CRM or a different CRM as long as it allows that functionality. So these activities, what's going on with every one of these deals, these prospects, these sold deals, these enhancement deals, whatever they are, that is living inside of that as well. And then attribution, right? Where are people finding us? All of those things that go into the intelligence behind that, right? So without those things and with that gap, Claude can't understand actually how revenue is moving through the company. So it can then be a kind of cool, useful tool, right? With a gap. It can be like, hey, you should check this out about how revenue is moving through, but it can't get actual data. Point number three, documented processes. So sales process, is it done the same way every single time, right? Is it documented in Notion? I believe is starting to penetrate into the landscape industry now, which is fantastic. That's where it should live, in my point, in my opinion. It is the central brain that integrates with all of these tools and integrates natively with Claude. So check out Notion if you haven't. Sales processes, proposals, SOPs, playbooks, and positioning. Positioning is a big one, right? Because from the marketing or from the demand generation lens, if we don't have our brand positioning and our values and things like that really crystal clear and input into the design system inside of Claude, then we're basically just going to get the exact same thing that every other landscape company gets when they type it in and tries to get an output, which is exactly what's starting to happen, right? So we get this like, oh my gosh, it's going to solve all of our problems. We all go out, we try to produce this stuff. It's like, oh my gosh, that stuff looks and sounds exactly like everything else that I'm starting to see. We're all going through this wave right now where it's like, oh gosh, everybody's starting to sound the same. People freak out and they're like, how do I do this? This is how you do it, right? Because without any of those documented processes, Claude doesn't know where to pull from, doesn't know how you actually operate, doesn't know what you care about. And so it can't make intelligent decisions and suggestions for what you do. And then number four, operations. So the Aspire side or operations side, production estimates, financials, costings, time tracking, all of those things, are they sinking in to how revenue is worked and sold inside of a pipeline management tool like a HubSpot? When these two get connected, you can follow a prospect or a deal from very first click or call all the way through their journey through into sold revenue or into lost revenue, and you can get intelligence off of both of those things, right? As we know. And you can connect the dots in terms of how the money is actually flowing through the business. All sorts of profitability stuff on that side, all of that we'll look at. So these are the four pillars. The other thing about the processes one, right, is like without those processes documented, we can't really create like automations around those, right? Like, so every sales call that one of our team members has, is there a scorecard that we can use Claude to automate and make sure that we're reviewing all of those calls in real time and then putting that to a leadership level dashboard that owners and C-suite folks can actually use. So no matter where you are in this journey, and it's no different than like when I give a marketing talk, right? Like everybody in the room is at a different stage of this journey. If you've got three of these things in place, rock and roll, right? You're probably already leveraging Claude and AI in a better way. If you've got one of them, then you can understand where you're at in the journey. And that's sort of the purpose of a talk like this. All right. So four pillars behind the AI ready company. So essentially we've looked at these four layers on the top, right? Conversation, CRM, process, operations, go down into the intelligence layer inside of Claude. Right now, the industry is flipping this. Claude is on top, and we're trying to get all of these things to give us visibility, control, and predictable growth. Not happening, right? Because we have it flipped. So when we have Claude in the middle, we have a connected layer, right? There's no easy way around making this foundational infrastructure work. And, humans don't really like that, do we? We want six packs without sit-ups. We want ways to speed up things. We want apps that are going to solve all of our problems. The reality at the end of the day is that isn't going to happen, right? But that'll shake out in the next 2 to 3 years. But the point is that it needs data in order for it to be useful. So office calls come in, they go into Claude, they're transcribed, they're analyzed, the structures, they're routed, the documents are then referenced across the playbooks inside of Notion and the SOPs inside of Notion, and then flows through into your tools, right? Deal notes in HubSpot. We're going to look at a tool called Convex. Anybody using Convex in the chat? Type a yes. Convex is a tool that Aspire just acquired. Well, Service Titan just acquired, but and then Aspire and Slack. So these systems are all connected with Claude and the intelligence layer in the middle. So no foundation, no AI. That's what I bring with the purpose of this chat, right? So how do we get there? What is possible if we do have those things? A little bit of a tactical side now on workflow. So here we go. This is a combination of inside of Claude screenshots. It's a combination of recreation so that we're not sharing internal data or any data that we can't share. As you can imagine, the AI world is rather competitive at the moment in the landscape industry. So data layer on the left side, calls coming into the office, calls happening in the field, likely different tools to record those. And there are 1,000 different ways to do this. Fireflies is a good one. Fathom is a great one for remote conversations. A lot of you had solutions in place already because you wrote whys inside of the chat. So that's fantastic. However you're going to do it, that's sort of the easy part of this equation. It's just like we got to get the calls recorded, right? And then we've got our sales playbook in Notion, and we've got our call scorecard in Notion. We go into Claude and we create a skill. This is a good one. Let's do this. How many in the chat, how many people have created a Claude skill? This will help me get an idea a little bit of where we're at in the Claude world. I'll check that out as I keep talking, but Claude skill. So essentially a repeatable task that Claude knows how to do every single time. You can program it to do this, okay? So we can call this whatever we want. Sales call analyzer, you'll name it, right? So run this middle screen, the Claude screen, run this morning sales call analysis. on it pulling the playbook. So what separates Claude from like a ChatGPT, and they're game-changingly different, is that Claude is able to access many more tools simultaneously. It's able to connect dots between systems, and it's able to actually automate these processes. So there's a big shift, right, that has already begun happening months ago, but the transition from ChatGPT over to Claude to build actual serious business systems. So um, Claude goes, it checks out the exact Notion docs that it needs to, that you told it to. It pulls the recordings from these tools automatically, right? It analyzes the scorecard that you have in Notion, and it updates the deal and logs it into HubSpot, right? So it says, okay, 8 out of 10 for the HOA deal, then comes over, gives you the result, full service. What is it? What wasn't confirmed? There's a budget risk that wasn't confirmed. Where is the stage of the deal? Updated, and now you have a score. So can't do any of that though, right? Without having all of the data behind it. So the skill, this is like a screenshot directly from Claude about how this skill was created, right? So it's all done in plain English for the simplistic ones that we're talking about now, right? When we start to do more custom integrations, obviously it gets more complicated, but the hard part is not creating the skill. It's literally opening it up and saying, I want to create a skill, right? Like this is the easy part. That's what the point I'm making is, like, the our industry is focused on the easiest part. We need to change our lens and go to the part that it needs in order to be successful. So I said in here, I want to create it. It asks me what triggers. This is actually ours, so it's asking about skills that we have and things. But the point is type it in, start to mess around with it, and you'll see the tools that you need to be connected with your business, right? Well, how does it run? How does it know how it's running? So then from there, you go from one call being analyzed, right? And then, okay, that's great. And that's going to be helpful. But HubSpot has a lot of that AI automation built in as well, right? So, like, where does this really scale? Um, Schedule a Claude skill every single Monday morning to write you a dashboard, right? Analyze 67 conversations, 11 lost opportunities, 6 won. What's going on with objections week over week, right? And obviously, the point in which of scale we are in our business, this is going to impact it in a different way, right? If we have 8 branches and we have reps that are sitting at each of those branch, and then we have sales level employees that are sitting on top, like, this is a different level of complexity. But either way, you customize it to what you need at the moment that you're at, right? So analyzing gaps, giving you a dashboard in which you can make decisions off of. That dashboard will look a little different for every company. So that's workflow one. Workflow two is what like called revenue intelligence, essentially, right? So how do we ask a question and find out some really valuable information about what's going on in our sales pipeline? Okay. Foundation, HubSpot on the left side of the screen is showing lead source, right? It's got our marketing data inside of HubSpot. Massive, massive infrastructure point. Campaign, attribution, conversion data, lead source, all of these goodies, right? And then sales, it's managing our pipeline, right? Actually visible pipeline from stage to stage, different pipelines for commercial and enhancements and residential, right? So we can track and report on all of those things. Activities, estimates, wins, losses, right? And then we're getting sort of our Aspire side operations data that's coming in from that side, right? So then we go in and we say, okay, let's create a skill. It's going to check these things, right? Aspire, Service Titan, about 6 days ago, released their MCP, their integration into Claude. So this stuff is changing day to day, right? But there's workarounds, there's ways to export this data into Notion. So don't get too hung up on like the process. The process is doable. It's more about the framework that we're talking about. So it kicks it in, analyzes that. Why am I 700K? Why am I going to miss our revenue goal, right? So new pipeline creation down 23%. Branch B, for those of you with multiple branches, has a gap. Existing customers, so 43 maintenance accounts have no enhancement opportunities open, right? So you're analyzing these based on what you all want to know on a day-to-day basis or week-to-week basis, right? And then how do we and then we leverage Claude to help us pull this into a dashboard, pull this into data that we can digest and act on. The amount of data visualization skills that this tool has is mind-blowing. It is incredible how it can process really complex data in our business and make it usable. So we get actionable things off of this, right? Like we know that there's 14 stalled deals and like we haven't followed up after we've sent an estimate, or branch B is low on conversion, whatever these things might be. The way that we get them is by having those layers of intelligence underneath of it. Um, Claude didn't do that. And I don't see a lot of us on social and in the industry talking about this fact. So workflow three, more on the commercial side of the industry, right? So how do we prospect and use data intelligence to help us create workflows around outbound and business development? So three, the sources on the left, just like the other two workflows, right? Convex, exciting new tool. I have a call with those folks to learn the ins and outs of that in a few days, actually. But we use Apollo. B2B data tools are pretty prevalent. There's a couple of main ones. Apollo is a great one for decision makers and verified emails and titles. It integrates with HubSpot. Convex is buying intelligence, which Apollo has as well, but Convex is very landscape and commercial property maintenance focused. So ownership changes, new development, new hires, things like that are all pulled in. HubSpot is, of course, managing our existing clients, right? Our warm pipeline, our warm contacts, our past deals. And then Aspire, of course, we're pulling Aspire from what is our service mix that we want, and best ICP and all of those things that are coming from the data that we know there from profitability and all those goodies. Pull that in, Commercial Scout, we call this one. You can name it whatever you want, but it's checking all of these sources, right? And it's matching based on changes in management, new construction going on, right? All of these goodies, and giving your outbound team a priority to focus on, right? Because at the end of the day, what happens next, right? We can all go out and make calls and knock on doors and we can send emails, but the outbound game or the business development game is won by timing, it's won by the right person, and it's won by the right message, right? So from that intelligence, we can say, okay, great. The same skill, the same commercial scout skill is going to pull all of that data. See, this is the powerful moment that I think folks are not realizing or not maybe leveraging through and through, is like the skill can have numerous steps, right? So we're saying create this commercial skill first, go get all of this information from these tools. Second, create the messaging that I want across these different channels for my BDs, right? What am I going to say on LinkedIn? What is my email sequence? Then I sync that to HubSpot and I send it out, right? And then I have talking points pulled in. I know about the facilities. I know about the references that are happening. I have warm connections and warm conversations that I can have that are timely and relevant based on what's happening with that decision maker. So again, the outbound isn't actually the advantage, right? Everybody's doing that in the commercial world. It's how do we leverage these different tools with Claude sitting on top to get us the best intelligence? That is the kicker. So when we talk about AI readiness, right, we're talking about what does it actually unlock? Because I don't know about you, but as a business owner, if it's not moving a metric that we were following or helping us hit one of our rocks or helping us actually move numbers in the business, it's distraction, right? So when we have these tools, we have forecasting that we can unlock. Like instead of wondering what's going to happen and stressing, like I know nobody on this call has ever done about what's happening in the next quarter or the year end, we can have much more data around those decisions and those positions that we're in. We can, as we scale, again, depending on where you are in the scaling journey, less owner dependency is a big one, right? So we can have a business that has skills that can leverage tools that can help our team be more autonomous. We can have clear attribution, so we can know more about what's happening in our business with every dollar. How is it produced? How long did it take to close it? Where did it come from? All the way through to profitability and delivering those services. And ultimately, right, scalable growth, which is what we're focused on day to day and our team is focused on. So how do we add different locations? How do we grow revenue? And how do we do that in a way that doesn't just make our world complete madness? This is what is possible, but only if we have the conversations that we've had before. So marketing intelligence, sales intelligence, operational intelligence, and executive intelligence through our dashboards is the power. So AI readiness in the landscaping industry is probably becoming a competitive advantage. Many others, it already is. I think the opportunity that we have, right? If we build these pillars inside of our business first, and then we start to begin to use these workflows and these Claude skills, is that we can actually get visibility, control, predictability, scalability, and most importantly, value, right? We need to grow the value of our businesses, both for the sake of our investment if you're a founder, but also for our teams so that they can continue to have more opportunity and more growth within the organization. So everything that we focus on is more like, hey, how do we make this thing, AI or ads or whatever it is, actually translate to business value? And I think we've seen this personally. We've seen it with clients. If these infrastructures are in place, we can do it. So let's do a little fun exercise. Let's give ourselves a score. So, and if you are brave and you want to share that score, that would be amazing. If not, it still helps us understand where we're at, right? So scale of 0 to 25, what is the score for how many calls are being recorded across all of those areas that we looked at, right? So if we're recording only maybe office phone calls, maybe we give ourselves a 5 or a 7, right? Like how far along are we on the call recorded? And then number 2, do we have a CRM in place? If we don't, I think I would score a 0. If we have a CRM in place, but it's not being utilized, or maybe not adopted across the team, or most importantly, not being utilized consistently the same way by each team member, where do you score yourself on that? 3, sales system documented, really all processes, but for today, a lot of today's workflows that we're talking about a sales and SOP, but where are you in the documentation of your processes, creation and documentation? And then I guess lastly, I would consider in bucket number 3, if they're documented, because we see this a lot, are they documented inside of a tool that can be integrated with other tools, right? Because if we have these islands of data around us that don't connect, then it gets difficult to really turn it into business value. So something to consider for SOPs and processes documentation in step 3. And then step 4, connected data. So if we have a CRM, is it connected to our ops side of our tool, our Element or our Aspire, or whatever tool you may be using for that? And sort of, are these tools connected in our system? Is your ERP system talking? Like those kinds of ideas, right? And give yourself a score there. This will help you if you feel like you want to share it. That's fantastic. I am always curious because I'm always learning, and it helps me get more touch points about what's happening inside of the industry as we have these sorts of events. But at very least, it will give you an idea of where you are on the journey, and that is important, right? As leadership and owner. So questions can drop inside of the chat for sure, and we can do that. You can also send questions afterwards, whatever it may be. As a next step, as an opportunity, if any of this stuff is applicable to where you are in your business now, it starts with the foundation, right? So we are not an AI implementation agency yet, but that is why we are focused already on seeing how amazing the foundation needs to be in order for it to be leverageable. So that's what we help clients do: set up these pipeline visibilities, the CRM tools, the connected systems, the sales systems, the revenue attribution, and the demand generation. So if you are interested in having that type of a conversation and looking at where the gaps are in your system now, and you can book a growth gap call with Austin here on our team. There is a meeting link there. If you want to snag it, you'll receive an email after this as well about how to do that. So that is our thing today. We got any questions, chats, stuff going on? No, Austin dropped the link in there. Thank you, sir. On
No
top of it,
questions yet.
on
Now's
top
your
of it,
opportunity.
cool. All right. Well, let's give it a little bit to see if anybody wants to drop one in. Other than that, I hope today was valuable, quick burst of information for you in your afternoon or late morning, depending on where you are. And that some of this was valuable in terms of leveraging actual business impact with AI. So thank you very much.
Have a great day, everyone.